Good afternoon, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy Thursday to you. I'm a meteorologist in the Raleigh area. It's very wet here, over 4 inches of rain here. And I know some folks in the Carolinas and Florida have picked up quite a bit more. So we're going to talk about what's going on next with Debby now that it is inland and weakening. But then likely to see a much more active pattern as our African wave train leaves the station. And that is what I'm going to focus the second half of this video on here, the threat for long-tracked hurricanes to start to develop beginning next week over the central and Atlantic, and then affecting the Caribbean islands and perhaps other land masses beyond that. So that is what we're going to be talking about. And right now, the ocean waters are running just extremely warm with respect to average. It's been that way all summer long, all season long, but we're seeing closer to the islands here even higher than average anomalies, meaning the very warm water that was displaced by Hurricane Beryl has refueled itself and rewarmed. And pretty much the entirety of this basin is running hot. The Central Gulf, very hot. A little cooler along the Atlantic coast due to Debby and a lot of rain that we've had. But nonetheless, still warm enough to support stronger tropical systems. So here's a look right now at our current system on the map. Tropical Storm Debby, 40-mile-per-hour storm that will weaken to a depression this afternoon and tonight and become a remnant low and get accelerated northeastward across the eastern United States the rest of this week, and then merging with a front by the time we get to this weekend. But you will notice since my video yesterday, we now have a 30% chance for development over the next week. And I think we're keying mainly in at the early to middle part of next week. Early week around here, middle part of the week by the time we get to the Greater Antilles. And that is the area that we're going to be starting to watch. On the Pacific side, we also have things heating up as well with Tropical Storm Amelia and now another system which could try to threaten the southwestern coast of Mexico. We haven't had anything really threaten land yet on this side of the world, but certainly something we have to keep an eye on. And we do have a system in the Western Pacific as well that I'll talk about a little bit here. Let's talk about Debby first, though. A high risk of flash flooding over North Carolina and Virginia, but a moderate risk all the way up into northwestern parts of New England, especially hard-hit northern Vermont, upstate New York, Pennsylvania, and that carries into portions of eastern Canada as well. And most of that risk is during the day today. And into tonight and first part of tomorrow. Right now, the storm center of Debby has sped up a little bit from earlier forecasts, expected to move towards the Piedmont Triad here tonight and weaken to a depression, and then accelerate as it moves into Western Virginia. But a lot of the rain is already preceding the system, so even though the storm moved in early this morning to South Carolina around 2 in the morning, a lot of the rain had already advanced north of it into North Carolina. And that's going to be the thing we have to watch in Virginia and Maryland and into Pennsylvania as we get later into the day today. So that is Debby, huge area of cloud cover. In the Pacific, we do have Tropical Storm Amelia, and we now have a potential typhoon forming here, which could threaten Japan. That is Maria. Maybe they call the wind Mariah. I don't know. I don't sing show tunes, but I think Maria is the proper name for it. But you can see it will become a stronger typhoon here as well, east of Japan at the end of this week, and then weaken as it heads into the cooler waters over northern Japan. But that will affect land here as we get into the early part of next week. So here's a look at the infrared satellite from the Western Atlantic. And here is Debby, the center right about here, east and southeast of Charlotte. So basically between Charlotte and Florence, and heading up in this direction. But you can see a lot of rainfall and a lot of deep cloud convection here in different spots here to the north and east of the center. Heavy rain falling on the cool side of this system over the Piedmont and spreading into Virginia. And then we've got the feed of tropical moisture continuing into eastern parts of North Carolina, into the Raleigh-Durham area, Fayetteville. And that's where the severe weather threat is going to continue to advance northward all the way up into Virginia, as we do have some stronger wind shear. Behind this system, we still have some moisture tailing along it, so still some heavier bursts of rain over parts of Florida, but fortunately some dry flow coming into northeastern parts of Florida and into western and central parts of Georgia, where they do need to dry out after what happened earlier in the week. We do have a mid-level low pressure system here that is not expected to develop, but that is producing some heavier rains across portions of the northern and northwest Bahamas and associated ocean waters as well. That's a look at the Western Atlantic. Here's the water vapor image as well, and you can see this deep moisture that continues to feed in from the Atlantic into North Carolina. That is going to spread into this area here this afternoon and evening and produce a flood for some of these locations. That moisture is going to get picked up by an approaching front here and basically spreads northeastward very quickly as the storm will start to pick up forward speed. We were worried a few days ago that wouldn't happen. But it is finally starting to pick up some forward speed, now moving at a heavier jog at about 7 to 8 miles per hour. You can see the deep convection continues to just pummel the North Carolina coast, and we're seeing individual cells in here firing up and a tornado threat, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also have, because of our trough approaching, we've got an expanse here on the northwest of what will be some heavier rain as well. Across portions of Western Virginia and Western and Central North Carolina. Here's the visible image, and we may actually see some peaks of sun here coming into the south beaches and all the way up to about Fayetteville and Raleigh, but a lot of instability. You can see kind of some deeper clouds here, and we've seen some individual cells within this band that have produced some tornadoes. One of them became deadly, unfortunately, overnight last night in the Wilson, North Carolina area. That's about an hour east of Raleigh. We've had other potential damage around Lewisburg. So several tornado warnings with this system, and that threat is something that we still have to continue to watch here. And you can see kind of individual bands spreading northward, places like Greenville, home of ECU, places like Raleigh and Lewisburg and Rocky Mount in particular need to watch for this, but we're watching this other band as well that is coming in off the Pamlico Sound that we have to keep an eye on across down eastern parts of North Carolina, and this will spread up into Virginia as the day wears on as well. So definitely some concern for some tropical mischief here in the form of some weaker tornadoes. Here's a look at our low pressure system, which will advance and weaken to a depression this afternoon and evening, and then we'll start to accelerate quickly, and by this time tomorrow, it's already up into Pennsylvania, heading into the Poconos around 5 o'clock here Eastern time. As we get to Friday night, it's already advanced through New England, so it is speeding up, fortunately, as this big trough, you can see the brighter colors up here, digs down and kicks it northeast. But before that happens, we've got a lot of moisture spreading northward out ahead of our system, so some heavy rain will certainly be continuing here in many places and advancing north. Winds have not been a major deal with this system. There have been some power outages because trees have fallen on lines, not so much from the wind, but from the incredible amounts of rain. But there will be gusts over 30 to 40 miles per hour inland here into parts of the Piedmont, into Virginia. Heaviest winds will be at the coast, but it is technically still a tropical storm because offshore those winds have gone past 40 miles per hour, but inland we're not seeing the kind of wind damage that you would be most concerned with. The bigger problem is the rain. Here is our high-risk area, which includes the Cape Fear region, Raleigh, North Carolina, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, up into Virginia, the Roanoke River Valley, the James River Valley, all the way up to the Shenandoah Valley, up I-81, including Blacksburg, Roanoke, including Waynesboro, Stanton, Harrisonburg, and even Charlottesville, Virginia. As we get to the day tomorrow, actually, let me zoom out and I'll just bring this northward. I don't want to ignore the Northeast, but you guys also have a threat for some flooding this afternoon and tonight across the Appalachians and the Alleghenies here, all the way up into Pennsylvania and eventually getting up into New Jersey and New York State, and some chance for some flash flooding continuing over eastern Maryland and parts of middle Delaware as well. Tomorrow, we still have a pretty good chance for flooding. It moves pretty quickly here northward across central Pennsylvania into the eastern half of upstate New York and much of Vermont. We could see, depending on where the rain sets up, maybe even in a high risk of flash flooding. I would think in the Adirondacks and into northern parts of Vermont. That flooding does get up to the Richelieu up in Montreal as well. I know this is only for the U.S., but we may see it continuing into the St. Lawrence Valley as well here. So keep an eye on that for those of you watching from Canada. Here's an AM forecast model. You can see our system will pick up, but it's going to bring incredibly heavy rain. Two areas to watch, one with our actual circulation in here. This is going to be 5 in the morning tomorrow, but we also have to watch what we call kind of the preseason rain here that is being advanced northeastward from our approaching trough here. That's going to bring some heavy rain with it as well. near the U.S.-Canadian border here, and see how quickly that moves northeastward. So our system is going to merge with a front. We still have to watch some individual cells here tomorrow afternoon, maybe a little bit of severe weather in here as our front moves in and kind of picks up what's left of Debby. The two are going to kind of merge up in here. So we've got a merger coming. That's not to be unexpected this time of the year. Let's look at individual rain totals, and this is basically from about lunchtime today on, and you can still see the potential for a few more inches of rain over much of North Carolina. Charlotte getting heavy rainfall, but the heaviest amounts from here on out are going to be from the Triad on northward into portions of Western Virginia, the Roanoke and Lynchburg areas up along the Blue Ridge here. Skyline Drive, we have to watch out for flooding there as well. We'll even have some heavy rain in places like RVA and even at the beaches, albeit not as heavy as areas off to your north and west. As we look farther north here, you'll see how quickly this rain is going to pile up here. This is rainfall through about 2 in the morning, and look how quickly it's coming down overnight tonight across western and northwestern Virginia, far eastern West Virginia, and western and central portions of Maryland. It spreads quickly northward tomorrow into Pennsylvania. We do have the potential for a maximum here of over 9 inches of rain. You can kind of see that at the bottom of my screen here, and that's going to be somewhere here along the Blue Ridge Parkway here in western portions of Virginia. So a very significant amount of rain, a 1 in 100 year flood for some of these folks, maybe even worse than that, depending on how this plays out. But you can see big area of heavy rain today into tonight across the U.S.-Canadian border, with more rain following it coming up from Debby. Most of this will be out of here, though, by the time we get to Saturday afternoon and Saturday night. Northern New England will see some heavy rain as well. I am certainly concerned about Vermont, not just from Debby, but from the next front that's going to take its time moving through. We're going to have an upper low here in eastern Canada. Some moisture will spin on the backside of it and keep things a little bit unsettled even into next week, although it will cool off. We do need to take a look at river flooding. This is the kind of flooding that takes longer to evolve than what you see from freshwater flooding. And we already have some major flooding ongoing here in portions of the low country of Georgia. You can see some of these rivers, the St. Mary's near McClenny in Florida, also dealing with flooding. And we are seeing some flooding on some of these smaller rivers and tributaries continuing in west central portions of Florida around the Bay Area. Even though the storm is a couple days past, the waters will continue to rise in some areas. And we're starting to see that now at the French Quarter Creek near Huger in South Carolina. We are starting to get close to flood, if not above flood, in portions of North Carolina. But take a look here at what is forecast. And I'm going to move this on the map here. And you will see in North Carolina in particular, while we're not there yet, over the next few days, we will see a lot of our rivers reaching flood stage. The Neuse River here around Clayton and Goldsboro, the Cape Fear River, the Black River, the Lumber River is one we all remember from Hurricane Matthew in 2016 that inundated places. Also, it caused problems with Florence in 2018. You can see along that river and some of the other rivers in the area, the Little PD, we've got potentially a significant flood coming. Farther north, right now we're seeing moderate flooding potential from the Roanoke River, the Dan River here, and some of the other forks of the Shenandoah River. And this will make its way into portions of Maryland. The Severn River may flood. I believe the Patapsco, I don't know if I can see it on here, that runs through Baltimore, could be in flood. There it is. We have to keep an eye as well on the Potomac here, although the heaviest of the flooding would be closer to the Bay. But something we definitely need to be watching here. And then farther north, we continue to have that threat for some flooding across Pennsylvania, upstate New York. And as I mentioned, here's the red. Some of the bigger flooding is a potential issue here across upstate New York and northern New England. And we'll have more on that coming in the next couple of days. We need to move on, though. Tornado outlook, we do have a 5 to 10% chance for tornadoes continuing. Raleigh and Lynchburg on north and east, spreading up into Richmond and Charlottesville, the I-64 corridor this afternoon into tonight. Tomorrow, there's a lesser chance for tornadoes, but it includes millions of folks here in the Northeast and in the Bay region as well. There'll also be a chance for some severe wind, straight line wind, not associated with Debby, but with the trough that's swinging in with our upcoming front, more of a summertime-like pattern. Take a look at this forecast radar here, and you'll see how quickly this system is going to start picking up. You'll see on the eastern side a lot of individual discrete cells here, some in South Carolina as well we need to keep an eye on here later tonight, according to this one model. But this system is on the move, and tomorrow we have kind of a more summertime pattern with heating of the day, some sunshine, but then the instability leading to showers and storms, which could turn severe. If you remember Beryl from a month ago, there were a lot of tornadoes in Texas and Louisiana and some into Arkansas. And then we saw kind of a second wave here across the Ohio Valley. At that point, the storm had weakened a lot to the point where Debby is now. But with the front that approached, the instability and the wind shear increased. Now, this won't be as severe tomorrow, but it is something that we definitely need to be watching here pretty closely. And you can see that the Energy Helicity Index shows you the spin in the atmosphere, and we definitely still have some instability and wind shear distress here through the afternoon across eastern North Carolina into this evening across Virginia, even a little bit over eastern Maryland here. I would not be shocked if we saw a surprise tornado overnight tonight near the Bayside here, maybe in Baltimore and Annapolis as well. And then tomorrow, we're going to see more expanse of that into the Delaware River Valley, into eastern PA, eventually maybe even into the New York City tri-state area. So we definitely, while the system is not as strong as it could have been, it is still one that we have to be watching for due to these tornadoes. I think we're going to see some of them, and maybe a stronger tornado is still possible here over the next few days, because what happens is the winds near the ground weaken significantly as these storms move inland, but aloft there's a lot less disruption. So you have some stronger wind shear, and the growth in the wind field from the ground up is enough to support some updrafts that can rotate. So you'll see that here. The photographs show you the instability, or the photographs show you the wind flow that switches around, and the instability you can see is going to be climbing here in the Carolinas. So let's take a look at what's to come here. The rest of the Gulf in pretty good shape. We're watching a bit of a tropical wave here. That does not look like it'll develop. It's heading into Honduras and northern Nicaragua. That should stay mainly over land. So the potential for this to develop has pretty much fallen apart here, which is good news, but we will have heavy rain across Central America into the weekend. We're pretty quiet in the Eastern Caribbean for now, and pretty quiet in the mid parts of the Atlantic, but that is expected to change here in about 4 to 5 days. You can see waves are coming off of the African coast, and we're starting to moisten some things up here. They're coming off every few days. Not all these are going to develop, but what you can see is that thunderstorm activity is beginning to pick up a little bit more. And so our forecast models are starting to sense some pickup in activity here, starting later this weekend, with the Europeans showing some potential development here with the wave that has just left Africa. Not a great chance, but this is 60-70% chance of a depression near Puerto Rico as we get to next Tuesday, and then near Hispaniola Wednesday, and then approaching the Bahamas towards the end of next week. And you'll see behind it some more potential behind it. Pretty much every few days there will be something to keep an eye on. I do want to show you ensembles. Again, this is going to change a lot, so I'm more focused on the trends. If we see more support for something, we get more concerned. But obviously, a lot of uncertainty with something that has not yet formed, and you can see that spread here. This would put us at about a week from today, next Thursday evening, potentially something near Jamaica or recurving south of Bermuda, with most of the model guidance spread across the Bahamas. Another system behind it to keep an eye on, then a third one coming off of Africa. And this is a look if we just were to take a snapshot of the European ensembles at next Saturday. And as you can see, there's not a ton of uncertainty, but what does certainly show us some concern are that a large area of these cross the northeastern Caribbean, impacting the islands, and a pretty good area as well impacting the Bahamas. But there's a lot of divergence here. Maybe a hurricane going this way, maybe a hurricane sneaking this way, maybe something weaker that could get to the Gulf and find a way to develop. Again, too early to make any kind of exact predictions, but it is something that I need to be watching for you guys here in about 4 to 5 days. You can see on the GFS ensemble, it is also showing this. So it's not just the European, and then we see divergence after that. Here's the next one behind it and another solution behind that. The GFS, again, is threatening to the Northeast Caribbean, also potentially to the Bahamas. We do see a lot more spread, though, by next Saturday. So it is 9 days away, and systems like this are not going to come into a clear picture until 3 to 5 days out. So if you are in the Caribbean, now's the time to prepare again. I am seeing mostly a track north of where Beryl came in, and now kind of pinpointing the northern windwards, the leewards, or Puerto Rico. The Bahamas, you'll want to keep an eye on things as well. For the East Coast, we need to just watch at this point. Gulf Coast, you should always watch because it doesn't take much to get something to go. But the East Coast, for a longer track system right now, we definitely need to be watching. Precipitable water is going to pick up, and you can see where these waves are coming across on the European. The red's indicating wetter than average amounts of moisture, and this is a lot busier than it was a few weeks ago, as we would expect this time of the year. But you can see every few days we have impulses coming across here. The European from earlier does show this system developing when it gets into the Caribbean next Tuesday morning, and then having a better chance to develop over the Bahamas next Thursday into Friday. If this is right, it is moving close to the Carolinas, but perhaps recurving. Again, that is 10 days away and much can change. You can see the wind gust forecast here. It is going to start picking up and getting windier. Either way, whether or not this develops over the Lesser Antilles Monday into Tuesday of next week, maybe the Bahamas by Thursday and Friday. After that, we don't exactly know. The GFS model from earlier was also showing development a little bit faster here, and that could be right. It may be completely wrong, but generally tracking northwestward here into the Southwest Atlantic. That's just one run of the GFS. So again, if we're looking out past 10 days, don't take too much, put too much weight on this forecast, as it could adjust quite a bit. We saw that with the Euro a few days ago, where it was originally going east of Florida on the majority of the ensembles, and as we all know, it went into the Gulf of Mexico. But potential timing on this for the islands, next Monday night, Tuesday into Wednesday. For the Bahamas, maybe later next week. East Coast, we've got more time. At the earliest, it would be next weekend where we have to watch. Here's the icon model. Not my favorite. I know it did pretty well with Beryl in Texas, but it did not do well here with Debby. But you can see this would be Ernesto forming by Tuesday, moving into the Northeast Caribbean, and perhaps threatening the Turks and Caicos by Wednesday and approaching the Bahamas next Thursday. But there's two more behind it, and they may not develop very quickly in the Eastern Atlantic, but when they get closer to the islands, that's when we need to be watching. Well, I hope you all are safe. Please take all of your flood watches and warnings and tornado warnings seriously here in the Eastern U.S. A lot of tropical moisture, a slow-moving system. We've got the potential for major river flooding, which is going to take a while to unfold. It won't just happen right away. It may take several days for that to occur. So please keep focused on that if you are in a flood area. Take the warning seriously. And as always, I appreciate your time today. And I thank you for watching. And I do ask you if you could becoming a subscriber of mine as well. As always, I want to give all the honor and credit and glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. As a Christian, I've been called to do something, and a lot has been put on me to help serve other folks because of what was done for me. And for me, it is being able to help folks like you be prepared for what may come. Romans 8:28, Paul tells the church of Rome, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. We all have a purpose, whether or not we choose to believe in God. This is my purpose. It is to help others, to share the good news, but to also alert you to dangerous weather and to help serve others and look out for other folks. I pray that you're doing the same thing, that you have a gift that you can use to help bless other people. And that maybe no matter what you believe personally, it may not be what I believe, and that's perfectly fine. But I do understand that those who are fulfilling their calling are going to be blessed in many ways. And I'm happy to pray for you if you are in need of some of that encouragement right now, because I think we could all use it. All right, I hope you guys have a great Thursday, and I will see you again around this time tomorrow. God bless you.